1874. Full time.
Hello, welcome to 1874. It's time for a match reaction as we look back on Villa's exit from Europe. We've exited at the semi-final phrase. Aggregate score, Olympiacos 6, Aston Villa 2. Not a score I was expecting to have to say, I've got to say. When we qualified for the semi-final, of course, losing 2-0 in Greece last night. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Dave Reed, and this show is sponsored by Luke Roper. And if you want to get 20% off some Luke Roper summerwear or anything from Luke Roper, if you use the code TVV20, you will get 20% off everything that Luke have to offer. A couple of disclaimers before we start. First one, Dave Reed is small on the screen because he's in Shirley. He's come to the Midlands and his Wi-Fi is pathetic. Hence why we're late starting, because we've been trying to work out a way around it, and making Dave smaller on the screen seemed to help, along with Dave moving rooms. He's moved rooms though, and he's under attack by wasp, so he may get stung in the middle of this show. Two wasps in the vicinity now. So watch out if you're watching on video for Dave Reed getting stung by a wasp. Third thing, I have seen some absolute nonsense in the chat in the lead up to this. Some absolute outright negativity. Some stupid comments, if I'm going to be brutally honest, along the lines of the worst Villa performance I've seen in decades. A short memory. I do not know where you were in the Championship or the relegation year, but I think some perspective is definitely needed. That baffled me, that comment in the chat before we came on. Dave, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Obviously, the result wasn't the best last night. I don't think Villa really showed their best selves over both games. I think it was a poor performance in the first leg and a poor performance in the second leg last night, and a real tough one to take, really, going out at that point, being so close to a final, and also given the fact that we've seen so many amazing performances this season, and then to put in 2 in the space of a week against Olympiacos didn't really give an example to people watching. I know there are a lot of neutral fans of other teams watching, and didn't really show them what Villa have been about this season over those 2 games, which is a real shame.
No, look, it is. We are where we are. We're running on complete empty at this point. You've got players doing things that they haven't really done at any point during the season. I'm not singling him out, but I use Douglas Luiz as an example of someone who's been absolutely run into the ground this season because of injuries in the area he plays, and he quite simply isn't performing to the level he was for 3/4 of the season because he's knackered and mentally tired, probably physically tired. And I don't understand people that are getting on individuals' backs, because collectively the players are lacking energy at the moment, and it's understandable because they've played 50-something games at this point of the season. In Europe particular, they're coming up against teams who get given the weekend off, and their last game is always us previously. That's what happened with Olympiacos, not played since a week ago when they played us at Villa Park. So, you know, there's reasons why this is happening at this point. We haven't become a bad team overnight. It's just the lay of the land, the situation of where we are, and negativity at this point isn't going to get us anywhere. So I'm not even going to entertain it, because we're still in a fantastic position going into the last 2 games of the season. And, you know, we got to the semi-final of European competition, and it wasn't to be. Nothing to do with players not caring or not working hard or anything like that. It's a complete load of nonsense. This is the same bunch of players that have put in some sensational performances in the last 18 months. And it's also the same sensational manager that's taken Villa from relegation fodder to pushing for the Champions League, and in all likelihood going to qualify for the Champions League. So, yeah, if you're going to put nonsense in the chat on social media, you really, really need a reality check at this point of the season, because it's absolutely ridiculous. Not really a question there, Dave, but feel free to bounce off the back of what I've just said.
I don't think I could have said it any better myself, to be honest. You know, you cannot question the players' appetite, work rate, you know, desire to try and get the job done. There just lacks that little bit of sharpness, that little bit of zip. Decision making, which is often one of the first things to go when you're tired. Decision making in the final third in particular hasn't been quite where it should be. They haven't created, well, certainly didn't create that many chances last night. I think really the 2 better chances came from headers, one from Watkins in the first 5 minutes, which was blocked, and then the Konsa header at the start of the second half. They just couldn't find a way to create chances. I think, you know, John McGinn said after the game last night that actually the first half was a pretty good performance, bar the goal that was conceded. I thought they tried to control the game much better and had much more control of the game yesterday than they did in the first leg. I think that is ideally how the manager wanted them to play, with that more control element, playing clever, as he said, ahead of the first leg. And it just so happened that they weren't able to create the chances that were needed. I think if Villa had just managed to get one goal, it might have changed the whole. There might have been a rush of adrenaline through the team, but as it was, the more they sort of plugged away, felt like the more tired they became as the game ran on. And then obviously in the final few minutes, Unai Emery sort of conceded the game really and brought on a number of the youngsters for a couple of European debuts. So I think overall, you have to say this European campaign has been a massive plus, massive success for Aston Villa Football Club. It's given, the fan base a real taste of what hopefully is to come next season, but on a much grander scale in the Champions League. And I think it gives the players also a reality check that these European ties, and if you want to compete on all fronts, it's
I seem to have lost Dave Reed, which isn't ideal. So I'll pick up what I think he was saying and continue on my own. Yeah, I think, you look at the options that we didn't have. Jamie Cash says in the chat, add Buendia, Ramsey, Rogers, Zaniolo, Moreno and Tielemans as options in the team last night. And we win. Proud of the boys. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of players there, attacking options that we haven't been able to bring on, not mentioning, Kamara, Mings, who are missing from a defensive point of view, but just haven't had the means to freshen up the side. And the bench literally says it all about where Villa are at the moment. The season's probably gone on a month too long for us, and we've ran out of gas and ran out of steam. Dave, I believe you might be back now. You cut off. I don't know whether you know that you cut off, but I think you might be back now. Can you just say hello to everyone again? No, he's not back. So I'll continue plowing even this lonely furrow on my own. Dave, speak to me. Are you there?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
No, you can. Oh, he's back. I think the Shirley Wi-Fi really not doing us any favors at all here. I said pre-game, Dave, that this would either be like the AZ Alkmaar game where he's gone completely right. I could speak to the audience again. I said pre-game that I thought this game would be like the AZ Alkmaar game where Villa would completely run riot in the first 10 or 15 minutes, or we'd concede early and the tie would be over. And essentially, the latter was what happened. Dave, are you back? No, Dave is frozen, so I will continue on my own. Apologies for people watching this live. The usual shambles on 1874. It's always a different reason every time. This time round, it is Dave's Wi-Fi, so apologies to Dave. So apologies from Dave Reed in Solihull for his Wi-Fi connection today. Adam, producing behind the scenes, is probably best to just leave Dave off potentially at this point because it is not working and it's probably not helping the flow of the show. But I'll leave it up to you, Adam, because you're the producer. And it's your decision. Ultimately, there we go. Dave Reed is gone. Maybe we'll see him back someday. Maybe we won't. And apologies for audio listeners as well. Dave doing a great impression of the Villa treatment room. In and out, says Jamie Cash. I mean, doing a great impression of Villa's back line for the first goal. In fairness, just frozen. I don't know whether people saw the footage back, but yeah, the first goal was a throwback to darker times. As a Villa fan, as the ball came across, Luca Dean not really making much effort to get back to his back post, and we concede, and it's the fourth goal that players scored against us. And fair play to Olympiacos. Once they've done that, I think they've probably done the hard work. I actually think they did the hard work in the first leg. It was always going to be a big ask to come back and overturn that deficit, because at the moment you can't see us keeping a clean sheet with the situation that we are in. But there we go. The goal came. They went 1-0 up, and from then on, really, it was a huge mountain to climb for us. Never really fancied us to get back into it. And in fairness, I think probably over the two legs, Olympiacos completely deserved it. We were beaten by the better team. I think they were tactically switched on in the first game when we spoke about that at the time on this channel. But yeah, cut passing lanes and then swarmed us at exactly the right times. We got caught in possession, couldn't really get forward in the manner that we wanted, and we found ourselves 2-0 down. Last night probably took advantage of the high line ever so slightly for the first goal. People could criticise that high line, but we've done it all season and it's largely been effective. I guess that you do have to change things and you have to try and acclimatise as the season goes on. But largely that high line since Emery's come in has been a success. I'm not going to look at that for the first goal, but probably too easy in transition to break through us and not enough done to cut the ball out coming across or mark men in the box, and we go 1-0 down and effectively at that point that is the tie over. I thought what John McGinn said after the game was interesting, probably echoed what I've been saying in the lead up to the game. I said it before the Lille game, after the Lille game. We're coming up against teams of supreme European experience that in the last decade, those teams, those players, they've all been in Europe, whether it be Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. They're used to playing in Europe. They're used to managing two-legged ties. We certainly didn't manage the home leg well. We didn't manage the away leg in Lille particularly well. Actually, the end of the home leg that time either. So it's all a learning curve for the players. And that's what John McGinn said, really. He said, it's a learning curve for these players. At this point, we are in Europe next season, one way or the other. It's something that we'll have to take on board, and we'll have to be better at it next season. And the players will be better for this experience. We've come a long, long way. But I think largely, if you look at the away games across the Europa Conference League, we've struggled. We beat Hibs away early doors in a game that wasn't really a contest in a point when we're very fresh, because it's the start of the season. Got some confidence, got some goals under our belt, and we won at Alkmaar, which was probably our best European performance of the season. Other than that, the away games have been a bit hard work. We've struggled in intimidating atmospheres. First group game, Warsaw, expected to win, go there, lose 3-2. The away games have been a struggle. It's difficult, and I'm getting really annoyed with William Shakespeare in the comments, because just say something positive, mate. Fourth in the league, get a grip. Everything you say is negative. I mean, what's the point? We're fourth in the league. We've got to a semi-final. Okay, we haven't won, and we haven't won the cup. We might not finish fourth, but I think we probably will. And it's been a sensational season. If you can't visibly say that these players are shattered, and that's the reason why they're struggling, then I don't know what to say to you. And there's no correlation between what Villa have done in the Conference League this season and what could potentially happen in the Champions League. There's just no correlation to those two things at all, because it will be a different team. There'll be 3 or 4 players signed. We won't have this horror amount of injuries, and there'll be more options to rotate, and we'll be better at managing a campaign, because we've got used to it after a season of having to do it. And Emery's been brilliant this season in terms of he's made no excuses at any point through the season about if we've lost games, if we've lost in Europe. He never really takes the tiredness thing on board. He doesn't blame the injuries, but they are there. The injuries are there for everyone to see, particularly in the midfield area. McGinn and Louise have played a hell of a lot of football. They're having to play in the middle of the park, and there's simply no one else to play of any seniority in that midfield at the moment. We'll look back, and I think injuries, have killed us, but we've dealt with it. I think the one that's completely ruined us is Kamara in midfield, because what that's done is it's meant McGinn has had to play more games in the middle, which hasn't been his best position this season. McGinn's best position has been on the left, sometimes on the right, forming that box midfield. That's when we've seen the best of McGinn. We haven't been able to do that because of injuries. Also, Dougie's probably had to play a bit deeper than maybe we would like. Earlier on in the season, he was able to come forward as a bit more of he was still a number 6, but he was probably more of an 8, getting to come forward and get involved in attacks, get in the box, arrive late in the edge of the box. And that hasn't been able to happen. We haven't even had Tielemans the last few weeks, just as he was coming into his best form at the club, just as he was looking like a real top player for us. He goes missing with injury. Rodgers, the same, not a central midfield player, but a left-sided player who was just starting to play really well against Brighton, playing as a number 10, looking brilliant, goes off injured. He's probably not there for the rest of the season because it's a hamstring injury. So all these things added up. There's just been a multitude of injuries. This isn't the true Aston Villa under Emery at this point of the season. The true Aston Villa you saw was in the first half of the season when they were beating teams like Arsenal and Man City at home. We've seen glimmers, of course, recently. Went to Arsenal, had a brilliant day, won 2-0. We have seen glimmers, but the second half of the season, because of the injuries building up, because of the lack of options, because of PSR and the fact we couldn't really do any activity in January, all these things have added up and they have cost Aston Villa in the second half of the season. But look at it. What a brilliant position we are in, considering all those things. Look at the body of work that was put in the first half of the season to mean that we haven't had a great second half of the season, yet we are still the favourites for fourth. I don't think that can be understated enough. What a brilliant first half of the season. These players and their manager and the coaching staff and everyone, what they did in that first half of the season. It was never going to be sustainable. But what they've done is they've put us in as best position as possible. And now when we are starting to toil, we're starting to tire. Okay, we haven't gone all the way in Europe, but we're still the favourites for fourth, which is a magnificent position for us to be in. So keep the faith at this point is all I'd say. I do think, we're going to do a preview that will come out in the next couple of days. We're not going to preview the Liverpool game now. But I do think leading into that game now, we're out of Europe. We know it's just the league now at this point. Extra days recovery, which a few people have mentioned in the chat, which is what should be happening anyway for teams in Europe. If you play on a Tuesday, Wednesday, your Premier League game should be on a Sunday. If you play on a Thursday, no one will like it, but your Premier League game should be on a Monday. That's the bare minimum that should be done. We're doing ourselves no favours, and it's no coincidence that every team has gone out of Europe, but at least, well, we were the longest serving ones. All the other teams pretty much went out in the quarterfinals, in the groups. We are where we are with that, but the Premier League need to do something because they're not helping their own product at the end of the day. But Monday, I do think that it almost becomes a cup final, big game against Liverpool, last home game of the season, which is always a great atmosphere. It's under the lights, as I say, Liverpool, nothing to play for at all. Whatever happens, we know if we win that game, we are in the Champions League. What a carrot for the players, Hopefully they can just find some energy from somewhere. Maybe being out of Europe will, kind of, I don't want to sound like Jolly and Scott, but be a weight off their shoulders in some ways. They know that it's the Premier League. To end this season in fourth is a huge carrot. So all isn't lost is what I'd say. We're struggling at the moment. It was always going to happen. We're not doing ourselves justice, but there's so many reasons as to why that's happening, and it's nothing to do with lack of effort from the players, lack of ability from the players, or anything from the manager or the coaching staff. It's just where we are. We are struggling. We are struggling for numbers. We are struggling for fitness, and that's where we are. So yeah, planned obviously to do this with Dave, but his internet didn't allow, so I've ended up rambling for pretty much 16 minutes on my own off the cuff. So hopefully you've appreciated it in some small way. Hopefully I've made you feel better in some small way. As I say, we will be talking about the Liverpool game in a match preview, so watch out for that when it comes out. Thank you to Adam for producing. Thank you for those that have tuned in live. Apologies, it's ended up being a little bit scattergun and a little bit of a mess in the end. And I've not really dissected the game at all. I've just kind of done a lay of the land video as such. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Anyway, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on wherever you are taking in your podcast. If you could do all those things that help us, like comment, subscribe, reviews on podcasts, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I keep banging on about that, but yeah, if you're enjoying the content, if you could do that, that would really help us. Watch out for that match preview, and as always, up the Villa.